We delight in the beauty of the butterfly, but rarely admit the changes it has gone through to achieve that beauty. Maya Angelou. Hi, it's Margaret Maloney, and welcome to Season 3 of the Death Dhamma podcast. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so appreciative that you are part of my community. And yet, I seek not to be attached to the idea of the podcast or even to the idea of our community. And that's our topic this season: attachment, clinging, and aversion. What happens when we really want something? What happens when we really don't want something? And what does it do to our suffering and dissatisfaction? Let's dive in and find out a little bit more with today's episode. Soon you will listen to a story of transformation. Sometimes in this story, the need to let go of attachment to a view of self or ideas or people is mentioned. But sometimes the story just flows. If you listen carefully, you will hear Whitney Sause describe so much of what she released in order to bring us her beautiful spiritual nurturing self. Everyone, today I'm so happy to introduce you to Whitney Sause because Whitney has so much to share with us. And I know she's a very generous soul, and she has used Buddhism in her life to help with some really significant challenges. And where we've been together this season talking about attachment and, the challenges that brings us in our lives, Whitney brings us integration of Buddhism and attachment and challenges and life. And on that, I want to let Whitney really give herself a full introduction. So Whitney, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Margaret. Thank you. I am, just as I was telling you earlier, just delighted to be here and feel so at home speaking to your audience.
That is beautiful. And what she said, everyone, just so you know, because we spoke a few minutes before we went live, so to speak, is that, we are her people. And I said back to her, well, that means you're our people too. So that is one of the nice things of making these connections on the Death Dhamma podcast. Okay, so Whitney, I think that you've been a veteran. Is that true?
I am a veteran, yeah.
You are a veteran. I shouldn't say have been, because you are a veteran. And that has brought some challenges in life. And I'm understanding that you have used Buddhism to help with some anger management issues and some other challenges in your life. And I'm going to let you jump into that story wherever you would like to.
Yeah, thanks so much for asking and creating this space for this conversation. So my journey with anger actually developed before the military. I was raised in a very abusive and chaotic environment, and we weren't taught how to process our emotions. There was a lot of skills that were lacking. So as an adult, to kind of escape from the trauma, I enlisted in the military. So the military really just gave me this heavy armor. So I had all this trauma, and then I had these walls on my heart. And in my coaching, I'll share more about this later, I like to refer to it as like taking off the armor, literally and metaphorically. For me, it was taking off the armor.
Wow, that's interesting. So you jumped into a situation that made you more guarded, and of course physically, but also very much emotionally.
Yeah, and if you think about veterans, and I've read a lot about Buddhism and the veteran psychology, and Thich Nhat Hanh has spoke about it because of the war that happened in Vietnam. Really fascinating how the veterans are treated. They're trained to kill people and defend our country, and then released into society and expected to behave. And it's a very interesting world to live in. So I enlisted in the military, and in that space, vulnerability meant death.
So you were taught not to be vulnerable, not to even think about it, not to even show it.
None of it.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So that was interesting to unpack. Getting out of the military in 2017, I was losing friends left and right to overdoses, suicide, murder, all kinds of things, because I was involved in a lifestyle which was just numb and avoid. Vulnerability is death, so numb and avoid. You cannot let these emotions come up because, one, they're dangerous. You will be dangerous if you allow yourself to feel those emotions.
Okay.
Me. And yeah, so it it took me down a really dark path of suffering and losing all these people and really not ever knowing who I was or what I wanted. And there was one night I was out with some friends and I got a Snapchat, and it was just the most insensitive thing, and it said Carlos is dead.
Ouch.
And yeah, and I was like, whoa, it was like a picture of a steering wheel. It said Carlos is dead. It shook me to my core.
Right.
And I knew, and because I had just left him and we had done all of the same party favors together, it was like, that could have been me.
Okay.
That very easily could have been me. So I knew something in that moment. I knew something had to shift, or it was going to be me that was either in prison or dead or something, that I didn't want.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in that moment, I made the decision to change my entire life. I disconnected from every person that I knew in the entire world because
wow. Instant
yeah,
silent retreat. That's difficult though.
it was 6 months of retreating on my own with no guidance as I'm sobering up from a drug addiction.
Wow. So cold turkey, everything, really.
Everything, friends, family, my lifestyle, my career, everything.
Did you go somewhere and hide? Like, did you move? How did you maintain this?
No, I was in a house, and I told my mom to stop coming over. I stopped contacting my friends, and what I realized, and it's funny how much social media is impacting our society today. But I vividly remember a meme on Instagram that said, "No one cares if you don't go to the party." And I thought, well, yes, they do. They care about me. And then so I stopped going to the party, and guess what?
You didn't hear from anyone?
Nobody cared.
Wow.
Nobody cared.
Ouch.
And I thought, it was beautiful because it was like, well, I think maybe had they cared, I would have been more invested in that lifestyle still.
Well, that makes sense, because if they had kept reaching out to you and pulling you in, it would be harder to resist, wouldn't it?
I'm sure there was a level of that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, for the most part, nobody cared. And it was easy to cut those ties. Yeah. So then I remember about 6 months into my journey, I thought, well, maybe I'll go. This was probably not a smart idea, but I thought, well, maybe I'll go to the club and see what it looks like sober.
Okay.
And I did. But I remember someone saying, oh my gosh, you're out. Like, nope. And so for anybody listening that's going through a major transition like that, it was really inspiring to me at that 6-month mark to know that people let go of who they thought I was. And now they expected something new from me.
Because they hadn't seen you for so long, and because you hadn't been part of the gang? Is that why? What happened?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You had to let go. You let go of this other constructed self who came out of the service. And then some of the people who knew you, they let go of Party Whitney. I'll call you pardon me for saying that.
Yeah, I like that.
Party Whitney. Okay, because you weren't there with them anymore. And then you showed up. And okay, so did that turn out to be, do you feel like that was a useful, helpful thing? Or are you saying don't do that? Or what do you feel? What do you feel like?
Oh, going back and seeing that lifestyle.
Yeah.
It could have been dangerous, but it wasn't. I guess, for everyone it's different. But for me, it was me kind of just playing with fire. And I was lucky enough to have been in a mental state at the time to stay sober and to see it for what it was. So it really reiterated my faith in sobriety for myself. But yeah, I loved what you said about letting go. And, I think coming back to that, it's interesting how us letting go is oftentimes like these boxes that we're put in are from the people around us and the expectations that they have. And so it might be hard for us to break free from that shell and become the next version of ourselves because we think, well, people aren't going to want to be around me if I'm not serving the version of them that they have in their mind.
And I think that's true. And I feel like there's a decision point there for any of us, right? When we've been handed this box or we've created this box for ourselves. And then when we want to be different, when we realize that what's going to serve us is going to be to get out of that box and be or do something different, we have to let go of that. We have to let go of that behavior. We have to let go of our own labeling of ourselves. And yeah, a lot of times we have to let go of the people because they're not willing to let go of that version of us. It's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff going on there. I was gonna say, at a career, this is like a career level thing. I used to tell people this is why sometimes after you've worked someplace for a while, you have to move because sometimes maybe your coworkers can't see you in a new role and you need to go have a new role. So in life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I could see how that would be that way. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I let go of it. I let go of my attachment to that identity. Well, I knew I had to let go of my lifestyle, but from then I knew that I had to replace it with something. Otherwise, there would be nothing. And I think that that is also like a really big part of my messaging as far as recovering from addiction, which isn't my primary message, but I
Mhm.
think that when we're, recreating any kind of neural pathway, it's important to reprogram it with something else or to fill something with something better. We can't just have this open space.
Otherwise,
Um,
the brain will try to go back and all the behaviors and habits will try to resume, I would imagine.
yeah,
So what did you
yeah.
replace with? What did you do?
So I remember sitting in my house, which was an awful house that I just needed to get out of so badly. But
Mhm.
I locked myself in this house and I committed myself to figuring it out. And it's kind of like, the story of Buddha, where
Mhm.
he's like, I'm dedicated to sitting under this tree until I figure it out.
Yes. Okay. So you sat in this house
For
and
6 months. And I remember Googling how to be happy.
oh,
And bless the almighty creator or energy that created all of this, because
mhm.
the first thing that popped up was the Temple Buddhist Center, which is in Kansas City.
Oh,
And it's a Western Buddhist temple, which is
mhm.
very rare.
It is
Um, After traveling quite a bit, going to different Buddhist temples, realizing, they don't all speak English,
right.
let alone the Western psychology with the Eastern philosophy. And so I remember sitting in the temple, and this was me coming back to Buddhism actually, because when I was in the military, and it's funny to see these little seeds along your journey, but when I was in the military, I had gone to the Buddhist services because I wasn't into church. I
Mhm.
was like, nah, no, it's not Christianity. I know it's not Catholicism. Um, so I got to go to the Buddhist temple, and I remember sitting in a room full of soldiers in uniform who were literally training for battle, and they were all collectively chanting Om. And it was on a soul level, it was like
Mhm.
just shook me. Um, and so yeah, so I started having these realizations, 7 years later when I came back to Buddhism, that it had always really been a part of my journey in small
Right.
ways. Um, but yeah, so I started going to the temple and I was meditating, and every single time I would meditate, I felt like I was going to die, like someone was
Wow.
going to come in and kill me.
Well, I sitting cross-legged with your eyes closed, potentially with maybe other people around you who you don't know who are in close proximity. I can see where when you talk about like not being vulnerable and being trained to kill and to defend, like that is really a place of we can perceive that as ultimate vulnerability in a lot of ways, emotionally and definitely physically. So that had to be frightening.
For about a year.
Okay. So what made you stick with it? Why didn't you just say, "Oh my gosh, this is too scary." Why would you stick with it?
I think it was just that I knew there was something scarier.
Oh,
I
okay.
think my subconscious, it wasn't a conscious, well, maybe it was, but I think mostly my subconscious knew like this is awful, but I can tell there's something good about it.
Okay.
Um, the alternative is awful and I'm going down a bad path.
Okay. So the scared feeling, the vulnerability, the extreme discomfort of the meditation, you still knew that this was the path for you. This was better than what you were facing without it. I guess we could say what you're facing without it, huh?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
what happened after
absolutely.
a year? So you said like for about a year, and then what do you think happened at that about that 1 year point where all of a sudden it wasn't as frightening anymore?
It, well, it turned into an ecstatic bliss.
Ah,
Um, I mean, I had a satori where I remember walking outside, and it went from like a three-dimensional reality to like a
mhm.
five-dimensional reality where I never saw everything as interconnected as I was seeing it after meditating for so long. Like the clouds felt alive. I remember walking outside and thinking, "Oh my goodness, like
Mm-hmm.
this whole place is magic." It's incredibly beautiful, and I just remember crying so much and thinking, "I can never let go of this practice no matter what."
Oh, wow. That is very beautiful.
Which is funny because, I don't believe that now, that I can't let go of this practice no matter what. I think that it's good to practice the non-attachment even to the good things.
Yes, I agree. I agree. And some of our teachers will tell that to us, and there's that whole, you've probably read it or heard it, the whole, I'm going to paraphrase it, the story of the raft, you build the raft to cross the river, but when you get to the other side, you need to stop carrying that raft because it's not helping you anymore. And so
Yeah.
sometimes some of the things that got us across the river have to go, or we're just carrying around something that's now, it was once helpful and now it's weighing us down.
Mhm.
Okay.
What a beautiful journey realizing what those things are and when to let them go.
Right. I think that's difficult. I don't know what you think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's difficult. I will say I have times, where I look and I'm like, oh yeah, Margaret, why are you still carrying that around? I'm guessing maybe this is something that part of what you help people with.
I do. Yeah, a lot of awareness work and, helping people understand the conditioning that they have accumulated throughout their years and really just helping them see themselves and the world around them more clearly.
Okay. All right. And so as you do this, do you introduce people to Buddhism or is just something that informs how you help others?
I don't mention Buddhism in any of my work at all,
Mhm.
unless it's something that comes up in a one-on-one session and I share maybe some information about the Buddhism. But what I found about my coaching is my curiosity spiritually really pushes people into their own spiritual curiosity. And
Oh.
so my spiritual faith and my spiritual practices oftentimes lead people a totally different direction, which at first was very triggering for me because I'm like, no, no, that's not the way. It's this way.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Sure. Sure. Because
and this was in personal relationships, business relationships, everything where like, even my mother, she's really deep into her spiritual faith, but it was a different direction. And so that's been fun.
so what helped you? So if I'm understanding correctly, it's that, maybe early on you were thinking that the path was a certain way for most people that you were working with. And you,
For everyone.
for everyone. Okay. Yeah. I was trying to not to say everyone, but thank you. By the way, I've been that way before too. So it's resonating. I'm like, yeah, Margaret, you did that. And so with the one day though, you realized this isn't exactly how it is. Where do you think that realization came from?
Oh, I remember the moment. It was sitting on my couch with my dearest friend Kimberly, and
Mhm.
she said, "Yeah, Whitney, you did find the way, but just remember that's the way for you and not for everyone." And she is so gentle and sentimental and just yummy, and so it was received very well by her,
Hmm.
from me by her, and I thought, wow. Okay. I mean, I was really riding on my high horse there for a while, thinking I've got it all figured out. It's yoga and meditation, and that's all you need.
Sure. Okay. And
Yeah.
isn't that, I mean, I'm not gonna say we all do that, but in retrospect, that seems not uncommon for us as human beings. And you think like when we find something, we're so happy. When you find something that's helpful, we're so happy. We want to share
Mm.
it with everyone. And then it's hard to understand, like, but why? Why won't you listen to me
Yeah.
like that?
But yeah, why won't you use my tools that I'm giving you?
Right. And I went through all this pain to get here. And you went through a lot of pain for sure.
Mm.
Pain and suffering pain and suffering, leaving home, pain and suffering into a tough environment, pain and suffering. I feel like in that environment, pain and suffering when you left that environment, and then pain and suffering to do your own healing. So I could see where you'd be like, hey, I walked this path so you don't have to.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And so at
Yeah.
some point you reconnect with your family, it sounds like.
I did. Yeah. A few years ago, my brother had a few babies. Well, he had a baby and now he's got another. And
Hmm.
so a lot of familial healing and um overcoming things together. That's been a really beautiful journey.
Okay. And what would you like to tell us about your practice now and how things are going for you now?
My personal practice or my coaching practice?
Well, let's do both. Let's talk about your personal Buddhist practice. And then, of course, I want to hear about your coaching practice.
Yeah, so my personal practice has been, I'm recently coming back into my meditation and yoga practice. I needed to take some space away from it for a little while because it was becoming kind of just like a check it off the box type practice. And so I let that go, and I was practicing my loving kindness. I would let go of the Zen meditation and was practicing my loving kindness and more gratitude practices.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, now I'm coming back into, meditating for 30 minutes a day, twice a day. And it was beautiful to be able to take that space and then come back to it,
Mm-hmm.
because it's energizing again.
Okay.
And a lot of ideas are flowing through, which is interesting because, when you meditate, you are working with concentration practice. And so, yeah, just getting back into my yoga practice. I became a certified yoga teacher a few months ago. And, so I got out of practicing my own personal practice with yoga, but I'm really enjoying, doing that again and practicing with other people.
Oh, that's beautiful. Congratulations. And now I am curious about, because you've done all this work and all of this work enables you to help others more fully. And I think that culminates in your coaching practice.
Yeah.
Please
Um,
tell us about that.
yeah, absolutely. The other part of my practice is I do two silent retreats a year,
Oh,
and
okay.
I think that's a important part.
Yes. How long do you go? I'm just curious.
4 days.
Nice. And
I'm
is
really
it,
looking forward to the 10-day.
oh yeah, I haven't done a 10-day. No, I think I've only done like 6. So where will you go? Is it close by? Is there someplace there by you're, I think in Kansas.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So is there a location close by where you can go for the retreats, or do you travel a bit for that?
I kind of just trust whatever guidance comes through. So sometimes it's close, sometimes it's not.
Okay. I get that. That's
Yeah.
nice. All right. Beautiful. So yeah, that's a nicely supported, and I can see where that's a nice recharge for your practice, for you, and you come back refreshed for the people that you support and help with your coaching, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then working with a spiritual director as well.
Okay, so you have someone that's like a spiritual teacher that you work with on one-on-one basis?
One-on-one and group, yeah. So we
Okay.
have weekly meetings, and I meet one-on-one with him, and that has been the most profound work that I've done.
Okay. And how did you
And
find that person? Just out of curiosity, how did you find him?
he's a teacher at the local temple.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And so that trickles over into my coaching business. Um, really, I'd say the most prominent piece is me being able to be fully present with the people that I'm with,
Mm-hmm.
and just listening to them. I think listening is a lost art in most cases. And so being able to be fully present with my clients and listen to them, and offer them this wide variety of tools, because I have had so many different experiences, and I have such an open mind as far as, um, my coaching is purpose coaching, and the flexibility is in the spirituality. So, I want people to know that I have a spiritual background,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not necessarily like, okay, you're going to come to me and you're going to learn about Buddhism. It's like, you're going to come to me and you're going to learn how to connect with yourself, and your higher self is going to guide you to where you need to be.
Okay. Okay. And so the main purpose when someone comes to work with you is to get a better feeling for what they're here to do and how they are to serve in the world.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And can you share, without, anyone giving up anyone's privacy, can you share some stories of things that you've seen people learn and unveil in themselves and walk away with?
Yeah, absolutely. Oftentimes when people come to me, they have the idea that we will be working on one thing, and the outcome that they have is totally different from the thing. It's just like a bonus that comes from working on the thing that we're working on.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite was a client who had two children, very, very young, and she never got to learn about herself or her needs or really cultivate a self-care practice. And as she started doing this, what she realized, and this has happened with many, many of my clients, but um, as she started to do this, she realized that she was having better communication with her children. And so she sent me a video, and it was her house. She just kind of did like a scan video of her house. And on her TV, she had a meditation that I had sent to her playing, and her two children were sitting there meditating with her.
Oh,
And
sweet.
I know I could cry just thinking about it every time. And it was a moment where I realized, like, because I know her family.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know where she comes from, and I know, how she got to be who she is. And so to see the children being affected is my favorite part of my work. Um, because I know that it's putting an end to that generational trauma, or the generational curses, or whatever you want to call them, where, like, you see grandma and grandpa all having these anger issues, and then, okay, mom finally decides to stop it, and now the children are experiencing life in a completely different way. And um, children living in a safe world is probably my top priority.
Oh, and can you share why?
Yeah, it's because I grew up so unsafe.
Hmm.
In my body, in my house. I didn't feel safe to express myself. I didn't feel safe to write, because I thought, because my journals would be read, and then used against me.
Oh, okay.
So the only way that I had to process my emotions was turned into like a sword against me.
Oh, I see. So complete lack of trust and comfort. And I really appreciate that you want to make sure there's a world where children grow up feeling safe, because children who are unsafe grow up feeling unsafe will continue to pass that on. There's a legacy there, because not everyone is going to be able to step in and do the work like you've done. And so you're nipping some of that. Hopefully you're nipping some of that. What's one of your biggest discoveries in doing this work? What was something you learned that you weren't expecting to learn?
All versions of myself are connected, and
Oh,
it's yeah, and like we're a team,
hmm.
and we're helping each other. And so, Whitney in this moment at some point is handing the baton into the future Whitney. And so, so this is a part of my coaching, is I've taught a course on, it's called The Whole Human.
Hmm.
And The Whole Human was born because of an experience that I had with my spiritual director, which was, I was meditating on my inner child,
Hmm.
and my inner child kind of walked into the arms of the Whitney that became the soldier, the protector, or the fatherly figure that little Whitney needed so badly, and then went out and became. But because there was, some trauma and things like that, it was kind of like toxic, masculinity that was existing within me. So I had this vision, and it was little Whitney going into the arms of safer Whitney, big Whitney, who could defend
Hmm.
herself. And then my teacher said, well, now what would happen if you introduced those two to future Whitney? And I was like, just thinking, okay, well, what does future Whitney look like? And she's glowy, and she's got her feet, bare feet in the water, and she's motherly and nurturing and loving and safe, and she's grounded and calm. And so it was one of the most pivotal moments in my life to introduce all of my personalities, my playful little girl, and my kind of badass army woman,
Sure.
to the softer version that I'm becoming. And so to be able to teach that to others in the form of meditation has been really beautiful.
As you say that, I just want to share with you the imagery that I got in my mind when you talked about, the child Whitney and the soldier Whitney and the future Whitney, and especially kind of like this earthy happiness, flowiness of this future Whitney. I pictured this future Whitney just holding out her arms and just giving those other two just a giant hug, just everybody hugging like a family hug. And that's what surfaced for me when you gave that So thank you so much.
Yeah, me too. That's what I see.
Okay, perfect. Well, it's more important that you do, but I just wanted to share that. So is there anything you want to make sure that we get to tell people before I let you go back to your life? And what would you really want people to know? What's a message that you would really like to share with the community?
Yeah, my message is that no matter what anybody has ever told you or what you believe about yourself, you are the author of your own story and you get to create whatever you want. And it might mean needing to separate yourself from the people who have the beliefs about you that you no longer want to be true. And you can always come back to them. And sometimes they catch up to you, and that's lovely. But just know, I'm thinking about a moment when I was probably about 23 years old, and I had someone tell me, Whitney, you've always been really smart. And I was shocked to hear this information because I didn't ever believe that about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's really important to people to know that you don't have to have somebody tell you what you're capable of. You can start believing in yourself, and you can start changing that dialogue in your mind right away.
Oh, okay. That is really helpful. Thank you. And I just want to circle back and check anything else that you would like to share with us today.
I think if you guys are interested in connecting further, they can connect on my website, and I have a free meditation that's available for download if they want to try that out.
I think that's great. And will you tell them your website?
Yep, it's whitneysauce.com.
Okay. And
So
everyone, SAUSE, right?
SAUSE. Yep.
Yes. So Whitney, SAUSE.com. And look at that. She's got a meditation for you, which we already know is really amazing, because whether it was this meditation or not, we know that one of your clients, her children sat down of their own free will, I believe, and sat down and meditated. So go find it and check it out. And thank you so much for being so honest about your journey and sharing these important points with us. And I know that it's really helpful to everyone who's here. So thank you for being here. I would love to hear from you, your thoughts, your suggestions, your own stories about attachment. So follow this link, I'm going to read it to you in a minute here, to leave me a 90-second message with your ideas and suggestions. You can go to https://www.speakpipe.com/death_Dhamma_podcast. I suppose you could also just use your favorite search engine to say SpeakPipe Death Dhamma Podcast. And there you can record an audio message for me. And be sure to come over to margaretmaloney.com. That's MargaretMeloni.com and join the community. You've been listening to the Death Dhamma Podcast with your host, Margaret Maloney. Thank you so much for being here. Come find me on margaretmaloney.com, MargaretMeloni.com. And until we meet again, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be at ease, and may you be free from suffering. Bye for now.